Welcome back to Bit Repairs, and today we've got something a bit different, not iPhone related. Got a customer that just said, can you do charge ports? So I said, well, yeah, no problem at all. Just USB port replacement. It's for a Samsung Galaxy Tab E. So let's get straight into this. I'll show you the device now. There we are. So that's the port that we're getting rid of. And we'll replace it with the new one that I've got here next to me on the bench. It's already been disassembled, so I'm not going to show the disassembly procedure. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're just going to stick a little bit of flux on the component, and what we want to do first before we use hot air on this is we want to replace the existing solder with leaded solder, and the reason for that is the lower melting point. So what we'll do is just turn the soldering iron on, and we're just going to replace, it doesn't matter how much of a mess we make of this port, all we got to do is make sure that the pins, the traces that they're going into remain intact. Do not break the pins, do not break any of the traces, otherwise you're in for a whole world of problems. The whole job just won't go as you're hoping it'll go if you break these pins. So here we are, we're just going to reflow them joints there with some leaded solder, so that's fine. Do the same on the other side. So just sucking in a load of solder there. We want some more again. Over on the bottom of the connector, so where these pins are down here. Okay. Let's get all of those, get them all covered in solder. Don't matter about shorting them all out, that's what we want. We just want all of these to be covered in leaded solder. Just lower this melting point down, right the way down, we're going to melt it. Okay. So that should be okay now. Let's turn it over, do the same on the other side. Let's just get this here. Stick that down there. Bit more solder again. You do use a bit of solder on this. Use a fair bit of solder doing this job, but it's necessary. There we go. So we're all done there now. We've got all of that leaded solder on. So we're going to get the hot air gun on, and we're going to just isolate this area now. We don't want to be heating the board up in places that damage stuff. I mean, to be honest, this board's quite nice. It's there's not much around it. To be fair, I'm probably going a bit overkill doing this, but one of those things I like to do. I like to make sure that the area is well isolated. That's okay now. It comes in out fully. So we're on 350. Let's see if that's enough heat to do this. Just see if we can get a bit closer here with this camera. Junk out the way. Right, don't know how much easier that is to see. Should just be able to see that there, so I'm just going to get some heat on it now. I'm going to start seeing this melting in a minute. I'm just going to turn this plate on because it started going a bit cold again now. can be a bit tricky sometimes to get out. There we go, so that's just lifted off there. And making sure that you haven't damaged any of the pads. And that's it now for the hot air. You only use the hot air now for these to get them off. You don't use hot air to get them back on again. So we might need to use a little bit of hot air for clearing up some of this solder residue if we can't get rid of it with ordinary heat. So go there, a bit more flux. So I'm going to get some wick now. We've got our soldering iron turned on. Okay. So you can see here, let's just turn that plate off. You can see here we've got some good pads. We've not damaged any of them pads, they're all in good condition. So what we're going to do now, we're going to try and wick some of these. Get some of this solder off here. Okay. So we're trying to get all of this solder off now. We don't want anything left behind. Actually what we want is for these holes here to be empty, ideally. So let's just get the scalpel again, let's just trim this off. Okay. Get a bit more flux, it really does help it to get rid of all of this solder. So we'll have to do a bit on this side and then we'll have to turn the board over and do the other side and try and get rid of it from both sides. What we want ideally is for these holes to be open so that the new port can just go straight in on top. You've still got solder in these holes, you're just going to struggle. So there we go, that's open now. You can see all the way through now. Let's just try for this one. Not sure on that one yet. Let's clean up some of these pads. They're all okay now. So let's just do a little bit more on this one. A little bit more work here. Go. Right, turn the board over. I'm just going to see if we can get these last two remaining holes opened up. Draw all of that solder out. That's opened up. This last one, can we draw it out? Yep, there we go. So we should now have 4 nice easy open holes here. Let's just get some more IPA on here and clean this up. Okay, that's it. Turn the board over, do the same on the other side. I'm just running out in my little pot here of alcohol. I'll have to top it up in a minute. Okay. So that's all nice and clean now, that is. Cool. Let's just check that one. Yeah, it's just a bit of goo in there. Bit of flux residue still left inside that hole. So now we get our replacement connector. Okay. Shame this can't zoom out a little bit more. But alright, I'm just going to put our connector on top now and just check, make sure it fits okay and lines up. There you go, you can see it lines up perfectly there. So we've got our perfect alignment. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to add a little bit of flux on this now. Okay. And then what we want is some solder. So what we're going to do first with this is I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit. So the first thing you do is you get these ground pads on the side solid, so that the connector is then stable for the rest of the work. So just going to put a tiny bit of solder in there first, and then I'm going to use my tweezers and I'm going to hold it down. I'm going to put some pressure on it now. Okay. Just a little bit of pressure there. Okay. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay. A little bit more flux because it seems to have disappeared here. Okay. Same again, let's just hold it down. Okay. There we go. Got a good connection there now. Right. So we've got two nice little connections on there, two nice little blobs of solder. That's a nice connection to the side. Not so nice that side, but we'll sort that out in a minute. Okay, needs a bit more solder on that one. Okay, so a little bit more flux at the front. And on this one. Okay. So done that, now we need a bit more solder. Okay. Again, I'm just going to use the tweezers just to put a bit of pressure on, just to make sure it's in place as it should be. Do the same on the other side. Okay. Tweezers, push it down. Okay, so now we have the legs, the sides thoroughly secured. So now we can concentrate on the important bit now. So let's just move this slightly forwards. Let's see if we can get this in focus. So I'm going to have to do this without the microscope because I really need to be able to see 3D to be able to do this, and also to zoom in a bit more. So The idea though is you're not using much at all. You're using as tiny amount of solder, absolutely tiny amounts of solder here. So you just don't want these to, you don't want these to be flooded with solder. Okay. You can see this in so much more detail under the microscope, you really just wouldn't believe it. So see where I've done that one in the left hand side, which looked a bit nasty, which does look a bit nasty, so I need some more flux on that. A bit of flux to sort that out. There we go, it's looking perfect now. So I'll show you them pins that I've just soldered. There you go, I'll zoom out a little bit. There you go. Plenty of solder on them. Let's just turn the board over and make sure we've got plenty underneath. We've not got quite enough solder underneath here, so we just need a little bit more flux on these. So we're just going to fill these holes up with solder. I know we've done it from the top side, but I like to fill these up with solder from the underside as well. Just to make doubly sure there's a really good connection there. Okay, that's done. So I'm just going to get some IPA in my little glass bowl here. Get another cotton bud, just clean all this up, clean this whole area up here. Okay, and take off my tape now, don't need that anymore. Like I say, we probably didn't need it to begin with, but I quite like the cleanliness of it all and the protection, and I just don't want to mess these customer devices up, because they really, people are entrusting you in repairing these devices as best as you can, to the best of your ability, and that's what we have to do. So just finishing this one off now. Let's see here, that's it, that's the finished connector under the microscope. So we've got all them pins in nicely, they're all well connected, nice big blobs on top of them. We've just cleaned the board up, just make sure we've got no flux residue inside here. There is a little tiny bit, but shouldn't be too bad. Never put hot air on this, even if you think, oh, I'll just blow that out of there with hot air, you'll end up melting the connector. They're not designed for heat. So trust me, I've tried it before and I've made the mistake in the past and I've had to change the connector again. So what I'm going to do now, I've just got my test connector here. I'm just going to make sure that goes in nicely. So it's quite new, so it's going to be a bit stiff. There we go, that goes in perfect. Yep, That's the one. Like I said, I've never used this this cable before, so it's going to be a bit stiff to get in and out the first few times. Right, so that's nice and straight. Just check it one more time under the microscope, zoom right the way in, make sure everything's connected properly as it should be. Okay, I'm just going to go up at an angle here because there's a few bits that we just need to be able to see quickly. There we go. I'm just going to go off view here so I can see 3D, 3-dimension. Zoom right the way in now and check my work thoroughly. That's absolutely brilliant. Made up with that. So very good connection, no dry joints, good to go. So there we go, that's going to go back to the customer today, and for me there's no need to test these, you know, as long as I've looked at it under the microscope and it looks fine, and the customer's happy to reinstall it into their device. The customer is actually a repair shop themselves, they just don't do micro soldering. So there we are. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've learnt something from this video. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much, and Bit Repairs signing off again. Till next time, bye.